training for life and the best getting better. So, Lord Lentini is affiliated with Southwestern Consulting, and we have over 200 coaches that are certified and actively coaching people in 12 countries and in all 50 states of the United States. And something we do is we customize training programs based on the needs of the company. So it can be leadership, it can be sales. And what I've discovered in the time that I've become certified is that there are a lot of qualified people, and there's hundreds of people getting coached every day and having great success because they're willing, they're open-minded, they're not afraid their brain won't fall out or would fall out because they're open-minded. And some of the things we talk about is what are the traits of successful people, successful salespeople, successful leaders. And in my work for over 25 years in working with salespeople and leaders, what I've discovered is part of the setback is their own thinking, that most people believe they're thinking, and they gather evidence to prove whatever position they've come to, despite evidence to the contrary. In fact, it's called confirmation bias. Small-minded thinking is powerless. It's not expansive. And what happens when we get trapped in our brain, our small-minded thinker, and we're taking something personal, or we think someone doesn't like us, or we think that there's someone that bothers us and they bug us. And what we don't realize is we're gathering evidence to prove it's true, and we can change our mind. Joe Dispenza calls it reminding yourself. And Shirzad Chamine calls it the positive quotient, that if you feed, and whatever you feed grows, if you feed negative thoughts about anyone or certain events in your life, or even about yourself, feelings that you're less than some, you're not good enough, you could have done better, maybe it even comes from childhood, that you're programming your mind, and that the master processor in the brain is the cerebellum. And the cerebellum is trained by you. And let me give you something to compare it with. When you learned how to drive or learned anything new, you were nervous and thinking about all the things you had to learn and wondering about how you'd look to others if you made mistakes. And you were listening to that brain and you fed it. Over time, however, it was easy to drive. But I can tell you that most people I've asked have said yes to this question. Have you ever been driving down the highway and wondered, who drove for the last few minutes or 5 miles or 10 miles? Because you got preoccupied with something in your mind, but your cerebellum took over. So when it comes to your judgment about negative people or negative events, your reaction to people, they bug you and you explode and get angry, or certain situations, waiting in line, getting the wrong order at the drive up, your cerebellum has been programmed to automatically act in those situations by you. So for people that bug you, let's just take that if you're a leader. For people that bug you, you're reacting to a past program. You've convinced yourself they bug you, and this is it. Or perhaps you've convinced yourself, this is how I am, get over it. In certain situations, maybe you've even heard yourself say that. Well, this is how I am. It's not true. It's what you've decided and how you've decided to be, how you've decided to act, and your cerebellum just remembers it. So Shirzad Chamine, in his book Positive Intelligence, and his program, what's called PQ, the positive quotient, they did studies at Stanford and took MRI images of people's brains who were mostly negative. That's what they were looking for. They were researching that. And then they gave them exercises to reprogram their mind or remind themselves. And they found more positive neural pathways were opened when they did follow-up MRIs. That in the neocortex, the front part of the brain, the frontal lobe, the neocortex has a right side and a left side. The right side tends to store the negative experiences, which explains while you're driving down the road, something flashes into your brain that reminds you of some humbling experience, embarrassing experience, mistake you've made, errors you've made. They all seem like good ideas at the time. And over time, you program your cerebellum to continue to act in that way. And the neocortex stores those negative events. Well, on the left side are stored positive events. And that the more you work on exercising and developing that positive side of your brain, new neural pathways are opened. Neuro researchers have proven this to be true, that there's a neuroplasticity to the brain. And that as you continue to change yourself, it's called pruning and sprouting by neuro researchers. You're pruning out the old behaviors, the established patterns, the automatic response to an automatic thought that your cerebellum has remembered from your own programming. You can snip those out. You can prune them out, and something new. It creates space for something new to occur, for a new program. Fascinating, right? Like our computer right now, I'm running Vimeo, but under Vimeo is Windows 11. There's a program running the program. And you have things you automatically click on that are triggered by certain people and certain events. Maybe you notice it at home. Perhaps your significant other triggers you often. And instead of discussing it, hey, honey, this triggers me. Let's talk about it. And I want to know what triggers you about me. Instead, we just react. We react to the trigger, the automatic thought. That cerebellum says, you know what to do here. Get angry, stand your ground, defend yourself, or feel sad or depressed. Even those feelings are programmed. And when certain events match what's happened in the past that has made you sad, depressed, feeling less than, not worthy, not good enough, you automatically go to that. So I'm going to give you some ideas on ways that you can remind yourself, reprogram yourself. One is watch some videos from Joe Dispenza on YouTube. He gives you great ideas about how to remind yourself. And I'm going to give you some here. In his book, Self-Observation, Red Hawk talks about just noticing your triggers. Begin to notice them. This is very valuable for leaders, especially sales leaders, because often we judge certain people and maybe we don't give some people enough time to grow into their career. I've worked with companies who have decided, well, this person's going to go after a year if they don't get going and do something, instead of figure out ways to help them win. Now, are some people not suited for sales? Yes. You're doing them a favor. By letting them go, perhaps they'll recover and rebound by changing their mind about things. Perhaps their self-limiting beliefs are what keeping them from succeeding. But I've worked with companies that have enrolled their people in my programs. And in fact, this year I had a number of successes where people broke through to levels of income and success that they hadn't even imagined, way beyond anything they had pictured for themselves. Some of my clients have been with me for 23 years, 20 years, 10 years. And over time, of course, I've been with them through this journey, and they get to prove to themselves that the program works. I tell them, if I tell you I found the way, run away. But I give them ideas on how they can make their life an experiment. They change. And when they change, things change. They have an open mind. They have a willingness to learn. And when they start to self-observe and notice what they're feeding, because what you feed grows, when they notice what they're feeding and they change their mind, that's where they have the most significant advances. I had a number of people this year that were first-year salespeople coming in on their second year just in the beginning, and they had lots of doubts as to whether the company would keep them, but we kept working on their approach, on their thought process, on the program running the program, and all the different things they clicked on, so to speak, the apps they automatically defaulted to, kind of like the default printer. Goes automatic, right? Well, we have default programs. And as these two people that I'm thinking of, someone's texting me right now about this program. As they worked on reminding themselves, both of them had great years, made great bonuses by the time we got to this month. And that's happened over and over again in my experience. Now, people want training programs and they want to learn techniques and tactics to close. And there really are no techniques or tactics if you're authentic and you understand what you can say yes to and what you won't say yes to, what you wouldn't be able to say yes to. And when you understand what your triggers are and you begin to work on them, but don't take my word for it. You can start to sample a myriad of programs. Read the book Self-Observation by Red Hawk. Study George Ivanovich Gurdjieff, who called that little voice the machine. Rainer Maria Rilke in the 1800s called it the little hooligan. Will you let that little hooligan run you, or will you run it? Rainer asks. He and many other sages are featured in my book, Sage Advice, Wisdom for Living Throughout the Ages. And in January, I have a new book coming out, In Plain Sight. Learn to see what most people miss and embrace life as it is. That's the key. In Latin, it's called amor fati. Embracing your fate, embracing what shows up, instead of spending so much energy railing against it, fighting it. Muhammad said, what reaches you was never meant to miss you, and what misses you was never meant to reach you. Christ said everything works together for good. It's getting to that space where you embrace what shows up, including the people and events that bother you, because you program that reaction. And when you change it, amazing things occur. But again, don't take my word for it. In my books, you might be full of shit if, or you might be full of number 2, after all we know better, the woke edition. I'm only pointing out that our unwillingness to have a dialogue today. And our leaders are doing this everywhere, pointing fingers at each other, making each other wrong. And that's something to notice. Notice where you want to be right instead of having a dialogue. That's a challenge because you're making everyone else wrong when you do that. When someone gives an idea that you don't like, you could say, okay, I agree with part of that, and here's something I'd like to add. And here's something I'd like to add. Shirzad Shamin says 10% of anyone's ideas are probably good. When you hear it and you're rejecting any idea, totally out of hand, and making them wrong by saying, no, I don't agree with that. Here's what I'd like to see. You wonder why your ideas don't get received? But when you're willing to embrace and accept some part, at least, of someone else's ideas, and by saying you might say, here's what I like about that idea, and Here's what I think, or here's what I suggest. Again, you've included people, your willingness to have a dialogue. A monologue is defined as, you can look it up, the story we tell ourselves. It's our story. It's a monologue. A dialogue is defined as a jointly created reality. And that's the goal you want to get to as a leader and as a salesperson. So here's something leaders can do to help their salespeople win. One, look at your customer book. It tells a story. You have customers right now you'd wish you didn't get. I'll bet you. All companies do. So you set boundaries. Tell your salespeople, here's what we wouldn't be able to say yes to based on our experience with these customers. And here's what we would say yes to based on the experience of customers that we love, and they love us. They're our top customers. And let's go looking for more of those. And by the way, you can't look at a list of target companies and decide they'll all be your best clients or they'll match with your best clients. But now you develop questions, a curiosity, so that you're wondering if they're a fit for you as well as if you're a fit for them. And by developing those kinds of questions, the answers will tell you whether they're a fit or not. You'll know when to say, and your sales team will know when to say, well, we wouldn't be able to say yes to that. Would you like to hear what we can say yes to, what we would say yes to? And clients would tell you. I mean, perhaps it's payment terms. Perhaps it's margin. What's wrong with a healthy margin? It's how we pay benefits. It's how we pay bonuses. Companies need a healthy profit. And in some societies, or even some sectors of our own society, here we are in a capitalist country, some people are angry at companies that make profits. Now, are there excessive profits and greed? Yes. But are there companies who have healthy profit margins, take care of their employees, and make sure that they satisfy their customers no matter what? Yes. It takes a margin to do that. Some salespeople don't get enough margin. You can help them win by looking at their personality, helping them shore up their character. I provide the disc. And the Wiley Everything disc shows the personality traits, the predominant personality traits. And the people on the S of the disc, it's D, I, S, and C. The people on the S are so concerned about the relationship that often they'll give in when it comes to a concession on margins. And when you understand what drives them, you can help them plant their feet. And see, it becomes automatic for them to just give in a little bit on margin because one of their triggers is people pleasing. And by the way, most successful salespeople are a people pleaser. The best ones, though, know how to balance it. They know exactly where to plant their feet and take a stand for their company and their own wallet. So there are some reasons that people do the things they do, and you can help them win as a leader by defining what you would be able to say yes to and what you wouldn't be able to say yes to, and helping them understand, based on our customer book, these are our best customers. So let's develop questions to uncover more of those. And these are the customers that are not very profitable. They don't respect us. They don't pay us within terms. We're constantly chasing them for things. So then you also develop questions so that you can eliminate those people. You could say, well, I don't think we're going to be a fit, but I do have a few companies I could send you to, or I could recommend. Sometimes that does stimulate a dialogue where the client says, okay, so then what is it that you need from us that would make us a fit for you? It's fascinating how that works when you're authentic. There's no tactics. or techniques. The other thing they teach people is detach from outcomes. Good leaders teach detaching from outcomes. Now, that doesn't mean you don't want to close. It means you're there, fully present, looking to help them win. You're helping them buy. Dave Brown, who's one of the managing partners of Southwestern Consulting, just wrote Servant Selling. I recommend it. I wrote a few years ago, might be longer than that now, Helping People Buy, where I talk about that approach, and it requires detaching from outcomes. I've sold multiple $1 million contracts, some that were over $1 million a year that lasted many years. Some of them may still be continuing with people that I've worked with, people that I've consulted, but I've worked with, when I was in sales leadership, clients that told us up front we could never sell them. I said, okay, why is that? In one case, the person was so aggressive, I said, how do you know I'd sell you? And then he was, do you know who we are? He was chasing after me. I said, yes, I know all of those things. But do you sell everybody? And he said, no. I said, why not? And he laid out all the reasons he couldn't sell people. Some weren't a fit. And I said, okay, well, I don't know anything about your company, so that's why I said, how do you know I'd sell you? He said, well, it makes sense. So I said, tell me why you said we could never buy from you, Steve. And I said, oh, he did. He said, yeah, all right, I'll tell you. Eventually, I closed that client. A major university told me, we got an appointment. And they said, before our butts were warm in the seat, Steve, I just want to tell you up front, we could never buy from you. Okay, curious why you gave us the appointment. Well, we've heard a lot about you, some good, some bad. I said, what's some of the bad you heard? And she told me. What's some of the good? And she told me. And I said, then why is it you couldn't buy from us? And she said, well, we have 16 suppliers, some for over 35 years. And so how could I ever award the business to you? We're going to go to one supplier. I said, that makes sense. I think the salesperson with me wanted to kill me at that point. I said, that makes sense. So then, since we're not going to get the business, would you mind telling me what's going on and what you're looking for and what some of your challenges are? She laid out everything over 45 minutes. And I said at some point near the end, it sounds like you need a partner. And she said, well, what's that? Do you mind telling me what that is? And I said, well, you have 16 suppliers. You're going to narrow it to one, don't you? Do you have a process of how you're going to narrow it down to one? Yes, I do. I said, okay. What's that? Well, we're going to bring them all in, and then we're going to narrow it down from 16 to 9, and then from 9 to 3, and then we're going to bring the 3 in. I said, okay. So then I can't believe one of them wouldn't have that idea from what you've told me, that would be the best way to help you, to partner with you. And I said, if you don't hear that, call me. I'll be glad to share my idea with you. 2 weeks later, the phone rang. Steve, we had all 16 in. I said, wait, you mean to tell me no one told you or suggested you need a partner? She said, not one. I said, what did they do? Do you mind telling me? She said, they all did a dog and pony show, why they were the greatest. Featured all kinds of products, brought in products, how they were going to solve our problems with products. And that's not anywhere near what we need. Would you come in and talk to me about your partnership program? I said, yes. Would you do me one favor? She said, sure. I said, would you add me to that list of 16? Make me number 17. Yes. 3 months later, we got the contract. Well over $1 million every year for multiple years. We partnered with them, and that helped them solve their challenges at the time. So that's detaching from outcomes. It's not detaching from a goal, but it's not having commission breath, because it stinks, where you're pushing because of your goals. And that's how leaders help their teams win and help salespeople achieve amazing things. So the program that you're looking at for training or leadership, here's some things that it needs. Will it help you address small-minded thinking and help you remind yourself, reprogram how you've all programmed your brains? Your team, your culture, by the way, is impacted by negative thinking. And if you can shift the team into more positive thinking, you'll find a big change in the culture. Then secondly, teaching them what to look for and developing questions, developing their curiosity and teaching them to be authentic, who they are, and not having techniques or tactics. I mean, a close can be simply as if you have enough dialogue back and forth. A close can be this. Well, it sounds to me like we might be a fit, and I don't know if you feel the same way. If I gave you a scale from 1 to 10, and are we over 5 on your feeling about a fit? Are we somewhere there? If they say, yeah, I'm a 6 or a 7, okay, great. Then what do we need to do next? What's next? How do we get to an 8? If they say less than 5, I must have missed something. Then tell me what you're feeling right now and why you would give us that rating right now. And you have a chance to reopen it because it might be something you missed. But a close would simply be what's next in your mind. What's the next step? A few years ago, I had a breakfast with someone that was interested in some training. And we had a breakfast, and there were a lot of back and forth questions. I had a lot of questions. It seemed to me to be a fit. Before I even got to ask how they were feeling, the guy said to me, "Hey, Steve, what's next?" I said, "Well, here's what's next." He wanted the contract. He wanted to know, when's the first program going to be? Fascinating. I didn't have to do anything, but that's because we had a dialogue. Now, you won't close everyone. It doesn't mean you'll close 100%. Some invite you just so that they can reaffirm their decision to stay with their existing distributor. And their boss told them, you better get 2 or 3 options. But they've already made their mind up. Some are just not a fit. And you'll determine that. Or maybe they will. And perhaps you missed something and you thought they were going to be a fit and found out they weren't. Some will, some won't. So what? Next. You have to learn to accept what happens in life. Accept it, let go, and surrender, and convert it to a gift. Find the gift in everything. That's embracing life as it is. There's a gift in everything. Some are a lesson. Some are long-term relationships, like some that I have had and have for over 20 years. And my business has grown the last 10 years 100% by referral. And that should happen with every salesperson who's successful and been in the job long enough. Eventually, 80% of your business will come by referral. And you need to be asking for referrals. And there's a way to do it that doesn't threaten people. And that's part of what we teach, referrals. We teach how to ask for referrals. We teach about being present and authentic. We teach about overcoming that acorn brain, that small-minded thinker that, by the way, is not very powerful. Anything small-minded is like a black hole in the universe. It sucks in everything around it. People can feel your negative energy. Open-minded, limitless thinking is expansive, and people feel your energy. And we teach people about the energy they're projecting. And your success will indicate your energy. If you're struggling, you have limited small-minded energy. And again, we make people aware of that. And all programs should include self-awareness, emotional intelligence, positive quotient, how to remind themselves, along with all the ways to approach a client and ways to have a dialogue and develop questions and boundaries, what they would be able to say yes to and what they wouldn't. If you have any questions for me, I'm coming up on our time. Thank you for joining me. Steve at stevelentini.com. That's Steve at stevelentini.com, or slentini, SLENTINI, at southwesternconsulting.com. We have a lot of programs. I'm at capacity for coaching. I do take some exceptions, but I have another 200 coaches that I can send you to that I know with confidence they'll help you with all of these things we just talked about. And if you're not going to use us, that's fine. We may not be a fit, but make sure you do have some of these things I talked about included in the programs. Now, I have self-awareness on Talent LMS. I have sales programs on Teachable, and I have the self-awareness courses on Teachable as well. And you'll find they're reasonable, from $189 down to $49. For rookie salespeople, I recommend any of the sales courses I have. Give them a foundation, and it includes a lot of the stuff we just talked about, helping people buy. And as a manager, you want to help people win. And that's the basis of everything we do and I do. Thank you.